Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to a Keto Coffee with Karen, episode number 2. Today we're going to be discussing the immune system. And obviously this is an incredibly important thing, especially with what is going on. And it's something that I feel that we're not discussing it. It's not being debated. And, you know, this is what's going to help us if anybody does get ill. I'm talking about any illness in general. So my guest today is Phil Escott. So Phil, if you could introduce yourself, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me on. Well, apologies if there's the occasional noise in the background. The kids are home, you know, and there's not much we can do about this, and that's cool. Well, my name's Phil Escott. I've at the moment, what I do now is I do consults with people about all aspects of strengthening the immune system or reversing autoimmunity. I wrote a book called Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, which was after my own recovery from it about 10 years ago from psoriatic arthritis, which was really crippling. I thought that came on suddenly, but don't we all when these things come on? Of course, they never do. And there was whispers for decades. And I already thought I knew about it. I'd written books on diet. I'd written books on training, fitness, that kind of thing. And I'd always thought, oh, yes, a plant-based diet is best and all that kind of thing. And I wrote about this at length in the books, in articles, and trained people, used to own a gym and whatever. And, by profession, I guess most of the time I was a drummer, a musician. And I started to notice that, the joints were getting a bit dodgy and things were aching a bit. And I had a wrist that really wouldn't work sometimes. And it was all misdiagnosed in the early 90s. And it wasn't until 2010 that I got really, really sick. And I had to throw out everything I knew. I thought I understood about diet. I thought I understood about lifestyle from studying sort of Chinese medicine, Ayurveda in particular, the Indian sort of system of healing. And, meditation, yoga, all that kind of thing I was into. And, none of it really helped at all. So I ended up freaking out and going to the doctors. Of course, within a month, I realized that their drugs were not doing any good and that they don't know what causes autoimmunity and they don't know how to cure it. So this is a bit of a strange profession, I think, to be in. So I had to figure it out myself. And it took about 3 years to reverse it, with a very, very bad wrong turn into veganism that I ended up I dropped about 90 pounds and most of my muscle, lots of extended fasting when I didn't really know what I was doing. And then went keto and cold thermogenesis. And obviously with the combination of that ended up really ripped, but at 9 stone, at 120 pounds or something, at 5'10", which wasn't a good look. And after being sort of big and muscly and then fat and then this sort of concentration camp look, it was kind of weird, and it took a while to build it back up again. But I think I've learned what I know from all the wrong turns that I've done.
Isn't that how we all learn, though? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can only learn by the mistakes that we make, as long as we are aware of it, analyze it, and start again, try something else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I had to go through that whole veganism thing. I mean, really, all that ended up was, taking away all my muscle and giving me brain fog and giving me horrendous kidney stones from all the spinach smoothies and stuff like that. And then I discovered Natasha Campbell McBride and the GAPS diet, and I went keto from that point on. That was around 2013 for a couple of years. And then in 2015, I just decided I feel better on the days where I don't eat any plants. And I started to look into this carnivory thing, and I've been carnivore since then. I haven't had a vegetable since then. I've had the odd potato here and there at Christmas and whatever, but I don't eat plants. We don't have any vegetables in the house. And I think they're pretty toxic, really. I think most of the things that are touted as healthy these days are devastating for our health,
Totally. Well, you've hit the nail on the head there. So you come from a very similar background to mine, from what you're telling me. And, you know, all the training you would have done years ago when you first sort of studied nutrition, would you agree that everything in those textbooks were fundamentally wrong? Right? Telling you to eat whole grains, all these I mean, we've been brought up to believe that we have got to eat your veg, you know, it's a mental thing going on there as well. Your mum wouldn't have let you had dessert, like my mum wouldn't, unless you'd finished your veg, you know, you finished your dinner. So for a lot of people, hearing what you've just said there, I can imagine them just instantly going, what? You know, that can't be right. You know, he's telling you not to eat vegetables. What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say that when you actually understand the amount of toxins that are in plants, you can see that they're pretty much a bad idea. Now, people think that vegetables are so healthy, but if you look in our ancestry, almost nothing that's available in the shops now even exists in the wild. So what did we eat before we had any of these modern diseases? And now we blame it all on saturated fat and meat. And one of my favorite expressions is ancient foods do not cause modern diseases. We didn't have all this stuff around. We didn't have broccoli. It doesn't exist. You know, we didn't eat leaves and stalks, basically. We used to eat, if you look at what hunter-gatherers really love now, mostly, if it's available anyway, it depends on their latitude, of course, but their favorite food is honey. Right? Can't help that. We're all sugar addicts. They love shinning up a tree and stuffing themselves full of honey, but they don't do it every day. They don't eat biscuits and cereal and chocolate and sweets. They don't do that every day. And they don't have seed oils with a combination, which I guess we'll come to, is really deadly, which is touted as so healthy by the WHO, and how to get over COVID. Get rid of animal fats and eat seed oils early in this.
Unbelievable. It's just
amazing. It's amazing.
I find it so frustrating. But the thing is, I suppose people, maybe we've just all got short memories, right? But if you look back throughout history, just as you said, the hunter-gatherers, what were they eating? You know, if we listened to the advice that we're given now, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have survived, right? We wouldn't be alive today because you go in a supermarket and, well, there's only a couple of aisles that I even go down now, because you've only got to look around you. You've only got to look around you. Everything that's packaged in plastic, obviously our ancestors would never have eaten. So whatever is causing the illnesses that we're getting today, surely is going to be more linked to this new diet that we've been told that is healthy. But they've got it so wrong. So
everything has been crazy. I mean, getting back to the present day hunter-gatherers, they'll eat honey. They love honey, but their real staple diet is meat. If they can get meat, if they can get a big kill, they are happy. This is what they celebrate. I often joke that they don't, you know, even in the Bible, they didn't celebrate the fatted turnip, right? They didn't celebrate with a fatted turnip. They had a fatted calf. This is what they ate. Everybody eats meat in all cultures. There's never been a vegan culture. Now, they also eat seasonal fruits and berries when they find them, but they're not like we get in the supermarket. They're not bred for extra sugar. They have to compete with monkeys and God knows what, and sometimes they don't get them. The monkeys are pretty clever at getting this stuff. And then at times of sort of starvation and hardship, they will eat tubers. Now, it's weird that some of this whole misconception about the microbiome, which nobody understands, and but some pretend to, and fiber and whatever comes from studies of the Hadza in Tanzania. And they say, oh, they eat all this wide variety of vegetable matter and they eat lots of fiber. Well, actually, if you see this study recently where somebody actually went and asked them, and they say, well, they eat the tubers when they have to, but sometimes they just chew it and then they spit out the fiber anyway. So they're not getting the fiber that they think. And it's always been interesting to me that the Hadza, they're great. They don't have our chronic diseases, but they're not that impressive. They're just regular people wandering around, regular kind of guys. But then down the road, you've got the Maasai who have milk and blood and you know, meat, and they're 7 foot tall and they bring lions down with their hands and stuff, and try to actually send people to the Maasai to be healed. You see, I think in all the cultures, it's been known that if you're very sick, what you need is things like stews, bone broths, organ meats, the absolute nutrition. And people say, oh God, no, it's all carcinogenic. Well, of course it isn't, right? But then the fiber question. Now, I've not had any fiber for 5 years. I've never had such good digestion. I often joke that, my turds could be on the cover of the Bristol Stool Chart Glamour calendar. When I think of my digestion all the time I eat plants, it's horrific. And so if anything, I'm living proof. If anything in modern dietary science was right, I'd be dead, without a doubt, because I went into this diet, which is said to be the worst diet of all, eating nothing but meat. I went in very sick. And if it had been anywhere near dangerous, I'd be dead by now, not having reversed a multitude of metabolic and autoimmune issues. So, and I see this again and again, because I started a Facebook group called 100% Carnivore and Beyond. And I started it about 3 years ago, I think, for about 5 friends who said, oh, I understand you gave up, somebody on some paleo groups, and you gave up all the plants. Well, can you help us out? We'll start a little group. And I said, yeah, sure. And then now there's 14,000 people. I thought, how did that happen? But you see so many cases of this happening, just perfect digestion, things clearing up. Off air, you said to me that everybody should try a 30-day reset like this. And I think they should. I think if they're sick, possibly aim for 90 days. But the thing I'd say is, what my thing really is that if we ate locally and seasonally and thought, what would we eat at our latitude 10,000 years ago, before farming grains and whatever happened, what would we be pretty much eating here? Because it's about light. If the light that goes in your eyes, if you're not sorted out your circadian biology, and you're looking at artificial light and whatever all the time, if the light that's going in your eyes doesn't match the food that's going into your stomach, there will be mitochondrial confusion and you'll be in trouble. So if you're healthy, and you'll stay healthy like that, eating seasonal berries and nuts and digging up the odd tuber and whatever, and eating a load of meat and fish, you will be fine. But some people, when they get sick and they get a very leaky gut, which is the only real pandemic around at the moment, once that's happened, they lose their vegetable privileges. They lose their plant privileges, even a tiny bit, even dairy, which high-fat dairy is great for some people, butter, hard cheeses, whatever. But they lose their privileges with stuff like that. And you really have to go back to fatty lamb and beef, good ruminant animals, and some fish and water and salt. Now, people, I hate dogmatism, and I can almost listen to myself saying that, want to slap myself. But really, as a reset for the gut, they're showing, my friends Zofia Clements and Csaba Tot at Paleo Medicina in Hungary, they show with PEG tests, with gut permeability tests, that there really is no way to fix the gut properly, even if there's only a little bit of plant matter left in the diet.
Right.
So, once
eliminate it.
Yeah, once the gut is fixed and once the gut integrity's come back, then you can introduce some seasonal things back. I chose not to, because I'm not really that asked. In the autumn, I had some blackberries off the bush and a few berries here and there, but I haven't for the past 5 years. I don't mind doing that now, but I think people stay healthy despite plants, not because of them. I think all the phytonutrients that they say are in plants are actually phytotoxins.
I would totally agree. And I was actually watching, I can't remember his name, heart doctor. He'd done, 10,000 operations. And he changed to restorative health purely because if he was doing a triple heart bypass, 4 years later, the person was coming back to them, needed it again. And he realized that this wasn't working and had to go back. And what he found was that vegetables, especially in the nightshade family, were, things like that we've all been brought up to believe is, good daily food, like tomatoes, the skin of tomatoes and the seeds, they have the lectin in. It's causing so much damage. These are the course. We're not meant to eat legumes. People who have got peanut allergies. Well, peanuts are a legume. So it's all back to everything that we have been taught that is healthy. It does seem to be the opposite. Can you remember the mad cow disease era? Beef has had really such a bad name, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, one of the finest foods is brain. You know, people are probably going, "Ew, yes." Well, it is kind of weird. We've got a few in the freezer, but really, it's difficult to get hold of. It is excellent food, and we ancestrally ate it all the time. And if you're healing up, it's very important to get some organ meats in. If you can have brains as well as liver and whatever, that's fantastic too. If you've got bone marrow and liver and brains in the diet, plus a carnivore diet, you'll never lack any vitamin ever. But it's so difficult to get hold of it because they got this really weird thing about how we're all going to get infected with mad cow disease. So they take the heads and they incinerate the heads. It's like the best nutrition out there. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, totally crazy. But even that, we now know that, it wasn't down to what they were trying to tell us. Everything has just been, really confused. Now, what would you say? Because, I have noticed, the last few years, there has been so much of a push towards being a vegan. Namely because a top film producer or whatever, James Cameron, who makes action films, decided to make a film about going vegan. So people have been, so I can understand in a way, if they don't have any background in nutrition, it is perfectly understandable to believe almost done like a feature film is telling them the reasons why it's bad, that they're all believing it. What would you say to these people that have been, and they've just, they're taking it as at face value, that they're believing what they're seeing, why being a vegan may be not the best way if you want to have a healthy body?
Well, where do I start on game? I mean, the vegan propaganda films, What the Health and Forks Over Knives and Game Changers and whatever. Well, I mean, just look at James Cameron. I mean, he's got $150 million invested in a pea protein isolate company. So it's basically just an advert, isn't it? So, and look at his poor wife. I mean, the deterioration since she went vegan. She's almost a skeleton now. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, it's just a choice. Oh, you should respect people's choices. You should. Well, basically a lot of my time is spent helping vegans who become very sick. A lot of these are people who've attacked me or even sent me death threats on my YouTube channel. They do get very crazy. I believe it's because their bodies are in starvation mode. And so they get very, very aggressive. It's in hunting mode. It's in starvation mode because they are eating their own tissues. You've only got to look at the decline among the vegan doctors like Dr. Greger and who there's a great picture of him where he's doing a 1-arm rep maximum, with a piece of broccoli. And you just think his arm's going to snap if he has 2 pieces of broccoli in it. And people are listening to him about health. It's astonishing. And you look at the carnivore docs and you look at like Sean Baker and whatever, who could probably 1-arm press Gregor for reps. And it's hilarious when you look at them, but sad in a way. But what gets me is it's the moral side of it. It's the enormous amount of pseudoscience built on an emotional response. And so you can understand people don't want animals to die. Oh, look at this, they suffer, blah, blah. But if you really look at it, there's a lovely video. If you can look up Ted Nugent, the guitarist, he was on Joe Rogan, and there's a 1 minute, 59-second, I think, video of Ted Nugent, and it's called Vegans Kill Everything. And he just nails it. It's just, if you really want to kill the most animals, go vegan, he says. And then off he goes. Well, you see, what happens with veganism, they eat all these crops. The crops destroy the soil. They completely ruin all the habitats. And then when it comes to harvest, they're spraying them with pesticides. So that's killing a load of creatures. Then they go in with the combine harvesters that chew up the bigger creatures, They even chewing up deer in the combine harvesters. Oh, it's all accidental, though, say the vegans. But they're destroying the habitats. Now, and then if you believe in climate change, which I don't, but, then you have the sequestering of carbon. Now, you want the ruminant animals back on the land. I mean, when you watch the BBC and whatever, and they have these ridiculous things about farting and burping cows causing, it's just insane.
Surely we would have all been dead when there was, how many buffalo used to roam the lands of North America.
Were they holding their farts in? It's nuts, isn't it? So, all of this just falls down. I mean, I have a good friend who I've come to know since he saw my channel and started moving away from veganism, is Tim Sheaf. And he's been in some of these vegan propaganda things. He was like the English vegan prince, and he won all the parkour things and, all this athletic. He's an amazing guy and a lovely guy. And now, of course, hated by vegans because he's turned away from it after his health failed. And he asked for his contribution to be taken out of Game Changers before it got put out there. And a lot of the athletes who are featured in Game Changers have now had health issues. They're having strains in ligaments, their injuries, their performance has gone right down. And, it's nonsense. These films are nonsense. It's difficult to see that, with the layman, it'll catch you because it's so emotional. But for a vegan,
that's what he does. James Cameron, he understands the telling a good story and creating these emotions because that's what he does. That's what he does so well, right?
Yeah. And I mean, people, vegans keep saying, yes, but what about Patrick Baboumian? He's a strong man. He's got world records. Well, actually, when you actually talk to the real strongmen, he's never made it anywhere near where they do in the competitions. And most of his records are sort of things that he made up to do in the back garden that nobody else has ever done. So
exactly.
It's a whole load of smoke and mirrors. And when then vegans will start sending you all these vegan bodybuilders, and basically they don't build it. They build it on meat, and then they think they get sucked in like anyone else. They see one of these films, and then they start eating all this vegan stuff, and they might maintain their strength for a bit, and they're going, oh yes, plant-based is wonderful. And you do get a bit of a honeymoon period, where certain things clear up, but it's basically a fast.
Well, they created the body first from animal.
And like anyone else, when the plant toxins build up and the symptoms come in and the gut gets leaky and their ass starts exploding, all of these perfectly normal things that happen to vegans, and the nutritional deficiencies build up, then they stop. And they never make so much of a noise about when they stop as when they start. So you don't hear about all the bodybuilders going back to meat. It's a real illusion, the whole thing. And I believe that it's actually a very dangerous cult. It brainwashes people, it makes them aggressive, it splits families up, it destroys the land. And it's just from me, who's been vegan. So I understand it from the inside, the devastation it does to your body. If anybody can remember, there's a channel, Brian Sanders, he's done a film called Food Lies, and he's got a channel on YouTube called Food Lies. And I believe his sort of pinned video is 15 minutes of why we should eat more meat and not less. Everyone needs to watch that who's ever watched a vegan propaganda film. It's brilliant. He's fitted everything in. I remember trying to get all that stuff into an hour's talk, and I found it difficult. And he's managed to get it into 15 minutes, a sort of TED Talk length thing. And it's utterly brilliant. It'll blow you away. It covers everything from the environmental to political to all the brainwashing, And for me, also something that is a big pet hate of mine is how spirituality has come to push all of this, because I was kind of tied up in the whole Eastern tradition of meditation and yoga, and came up here where I am now in the north of England for this transcendental meditation movement, whatever, in the 80s. And I don't have anything to do with it anymore, although I think meditation's great and whatever. But when it's all gets tied up with this vegetarianism, and I mean, my friends now who are hitting their 50s, 60s, 70s, who are in this, well, it is a cult, I guess, not as obvious as some, but they are absolutely dropping like flies with cancer, trying to eat these southern Indian diets in the north of England. I mean, huge plant toxin overloads, deuterium overloads, just circadian mismatch. And they think that if they get sick, a few sort of Ayurvedic pills with a few herbs and a bit of cow shit in is going to sort them out. It never does. But going carnivore does. I mean, I'm the only one of these people, I think, who's reversed anything serious, apart from my mum, and we reversed her breast cancer at age 93, on a carnivore diet with a £5 bottle of Lugol's iodine. And,
wow.
It's not rocket science a lot of the time. And these are the only two people, I think, who the two of us who've ever in this area really reversed anything serious. They have more chronic disease, autoimmunity, and cancer than the local sort of McDonald's and pizza eaters, to be honest. And I've made videos about that, kind of pleading with them. And some people have seen sense, some people obviously have got pretty cross with me about it. You do this carnivore diet. I mean, people say that you're some kind of shill for the meat industry and you're telling lies, but how difficult is it? It would be so easy if it was veganism or Mediterranean diet or something. Everybody would accept it. But telling people actually eat just meat and fat, I'd rather it wasn't true, because it's a hassle.
Yes, but the
no
thing
money
is,
in it.
I do think it has got to also to do with something that anybody sort of in our age group, back then we have been told for so long that beef is bad, that it's just on autopilot. People really truly believe that. But yeah, beef is the most bioavailable food source on the planet for human beings. People, you've only got to look at people booking up for these vitamin B12 shots. You think, well, starting beef, that might be yeah, you're not getting vitamin B12 from your plant-based diet. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that the human body requires these things, right?
Yeah. And you're not getting it, you're not really getting it from supplements either when your gut's leaky, because nobody's absorbing it. The people who need these extra vitamins are not getting them from supplements. So 99% of your Holland and Barrett crap just goes down the toilet. So I think your vitamin pills are oysters, liver, the organ meats, that kind of thing are the real vitamin pills. You see, I think it's important people look at where this came from, where this myth about meat being carcinogenic came from. And you have to look back to the 1800s really for this. When you tell vegetarians, who are normally much more stable and sane than vegans just won't listen. But when you tell a vegetarian where their diet actually came from in the West, this whole business about all of it generally comes from religion and mind control. Long have they known that if you put people on a plant-based diet, they become more sort of susceptible to lunacy and their brain shrinks down a bit. They don't have the saturated fat and omega-3s ready, available to build their brains. So look at back in the 1860s, I think it was, and there was Ellen G. White, and she was a teenager, part of this the Seventh-day Adventists, and she started to have these visions that we should all eat a Garden of Eden diet, and the most appalling thing is sexual desire. And so this Garden of Eden diet squashes down the sexual desire, and this is what God wants. And then this family, the White family, adopted this young boy of about 12, 13, something like that. And he used to help her out with the typesetting of all her lunatic pamphlets and books and whatever. And he grew up to have one of in America, he had all these cereal companies. Now his name was Harvey Kellogg. And this is where it came from. He was brainwashed at an early age. I mean, he was barking mad. He never consummated his marriage. He had these sanatoriums where he'd just do these appalling things to people and feed them all this nonsense of, dried grains. And that became healthy. And so now cornflakes. I mean, I walk down the cereal aisle and I just see cornflakes. And I did the sunshine breakfast. I just see this anti-masturbation cornflakes. And when you see where it comes from, it's absolute nonsense. So your libido goes down. What does that show you? That your hormones are trashed. It's just this lunacy of religion that comes into diet. And this is where it came from. Now, the WHO, the committee on the WHO that made these decisions and looked at these ridiculous studies and funded them, really, I think, that showed that meat was carcinogenic. These people are with or have very close ties to the Seventh-day Adventists. So most of the committee, the ones who weren't, spoke out against it, said it was the most ridiculous thing ever. Like if you see interviews with Professor David Klurfeld, he says this was nonsense. This was pushed through by all the vegans and vegetarians. There's nothing carcinogenic about meat. They fiddled the figures to show that it did. And they did epidemiological studies on people who also eat pizza and ice cream and have seed oils and all that kind of thing. So, they say, oh, this McDonald's causes cancer because of the meat.
Yeah.
If you take the meat out of the meat, it's all the rest of the stuff.
The rest of it.
Yeah, it's the seed oils that they fry the nightshades in, the fries. It's the bun, it's the Coca-Cola. How can you expect that one little bit of meat in there is the culprit? So all of diet science is insane. If anybody wonders about this, I would say really go and listen to interviews with Ivor Cummins or Nina Teicholz, and both of them have looked at these tens of thousands of epidemiological studies and just blown them all up for the nonsense they are. We've been completely fooled. And this is why what I'm proud of is on my carnivore groups, 99 out of 100 have seen through the whole nonsense that's going on now. Because once you've seen through the absolute deceit in one area of what our controllers tell us, it's much easier to see it in other areas.
Absolutely.
And you know, you've seen through the diet thing. It's the only thing you can really test on yourself. It's very difficult to test climate change. I mean, there might be true aspects about it. I don't know, because I am not the planet. So I can't tell you. But I have a human body, and I see other human bodies reacting absolutely beautifully with so many incurable diseases. I mean, every single thing I can imagine I've seen reversed on a carnivore diet, with hopefully other interventions like light and emotional stuff and all that kind of thing to help, and lifestyle and all sorts of things. But on the carnivore diet as a basis of it, except for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease or something, which is a very difficult one to shift. But I'm sure, I still don't think it's incurable. I just think it's a very difficult one. You know, it's a very deep-seated neurological issue, and the neurological things are the slowest to heal, like MS and whatever. Although they do, plenty of carnivores have reversed their MS. But you know, when you say that to people, they think you're insane.
Totally, you know? Because it's completely, and that's it. It's just completely opposite. We've been bombarded, all the, you know, everything with what's going on at the moment. So instead of looking at how to treat or how to prevent certain things, even just catching a common cold or other viruses, it doesn't have to be the one that's being spoken about these days. But why isn't there so much about look at ways to boost your immune system? I just don't understand why it's not being spoken about. At the end of the day, prevention is better than cure. And so what would you say to people, the quickest way to boost your immune system?
Well, just to go back to the first bit of that you said, I think the reason why they don't talk about it is they have no idea. I mean, you know, when you get told to eat low fat, don't eat saturated fat and eat seed oils, go jogging, you know, it's the calories in, calories out thing. It just doesn't work. You know, it's very rare. I mean, some people with incredible willpower will lose weight, and then they generally put most of it back on again. I mean, you can see it when Boris, you know, had a little sniffle back earlier last year, and then they took him into hospital, and then out he came and decided, okay, I'm a fat bastard. I better do something about it. So he probably went low carb and rode his bike around for a bit. It didn't work. He still looks exactly the same now. If he'd have eaten a fully carnivore diet, he'd look completely different now. So I think what people need to do to boost their immune system is to realize how many of the things that we do in our modern life confuse the immune system. So it's not a matter of going out and living in a cave and wearing bear skins or whatever, but you can fool the body into knowing that it's seasonal. The seasons are happening, rather, wherever you are, knowing what season it is. Obviously, it's very nice to get out in the sun, but we don't have so much sun in England. So make the most of it when it's there, not only at midday, but morning sun, morning light in the eyes. Get your feet on the ground, ground your body, get the morning sun in your eyes to tell the cortisol cycle to start, to get the melatonin produced, because it doesn't get produced at night. It gets produced in the morning and through the day, and then it gets released at night. So at night, wear some blue blockers, get iris on your computer, you know, I mean, I've got an orange light up here. We've never had, it's probably, I look a weird color. I've got some orange light here, and we have candles, and we have a screen over the front of the TV for the kids, you know, so an orange screen, so blue light doesn't come out. The whole business about light is incredibly disruptive. So once you've got the circadian cycle going, and if it's the winter, feel some cold. You know, it's not, people say, oh, I can't do cold thermogenesis, but try it. You just try and see how amazing it feels. Just turn your shower to cold for a minute or two at the end, and turn round and round it. It's only that initial horror. And then there's this sort of warm glow, and you get out and you feel different for the day. And it's a matter of just putting some signals into the body that it's winter. We get sick in the winter, not because there's more viruses around. if you believe the virus theory, which I'm not sure I do. I think I prefer the terrain theory. But whatever's going on and why ever we get sick is because of our disconnection from nature. And we are more disconnected from nature in the winter than we are in the summer. At least people get out in the summer and you know, they have a bit more natural light.
If you're not on lockdown.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were trying to do that and saying, you know, stay inside and don't get too much sun because the sun can be damaging. I mean, it was insane. Some of the things that they've said, I think, you know, the business of this whole COVID thing or whatever and other things, I look at it with the solutions. Now, I don't know what's going on in a lot of these things completely, but I do know that the solutions they offer are nonsense. It's like when you look at the climate change thing and they're going on about the cows and how we've all got to go vegan. I mean, that is so much the wrong way to deal with the planet. And that's how we've destroyed it anyway with all these acres of farmland. Now, it's very disturbing that a lot of the billionaires are investing in farmland. I mean, Bill Gates has got, what is it, 440,000 hectares or something?
Not the most. That's you know, just, why?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very sinister. This needs to be stopped. And the poor vegans, they do it with a good heart, but they are really supporting this horrific agenda that's coming around. And you know, there are certain outcomes that could take away our ancestral food. They want to take away the meat, and you know, they're doing it via all sorts of methods. But I actually am very optimistic, and I think this is going to come out. People are going to wake up, and it's going to be beautiful. But it's difficult times, and you need to look at, for strengthening the immune system now as well, is getting rid of fear. You know, really educating yourself to get rid of fear, because the worst things are locked down in your house, lack of human contact, wearing sort of recycled snot on your face with these muzzles. I mean, it's absolutely nuts.
Unbelievable that anybody can think that any of that is healthy. I mean, the thing is, I suppose there's never going to be one thing. And because, like you said, you know, with your own autoimmune disease, it didn't come on like that. Nothing ever does. So because people can't see what's going on in their body. So, you know, I hear all the time, oh, so-and-so, he's in hospital, but he was healthy. You think, well, how do you know? How do you know he's healthy? Because he might have been on the scale of becoming very unhealthy. Just those symptoms haven't come out yet. So the whole thing that I see around this is it's never going to be one thing. You've got to look at your diet. You've got to look, like you just said, the fear, you know, cortisol, your stress hormone, you know, if that's around all the time, there's doing so much damage to the body. So like you said, it's a bit of everything, isn't it? Your diet, exercise, you've just said, jogging, maybe not the best form of exercise for you. Less stress. You've already mentioned about the lighting. I do think also, you know, EMF, all these things. And where people are sort of trying to bounce on one thing, I think, well, let's look at the big picture, and maybe it's an accumulation. You know, somebody who has a good diet and is exercising, that maybe the EMF wouldn't affect them. But then somebody who's this, it's accumulation of things. Would you agree?
Yeah. I see health as like a wheel. You know, you can lose a few spokes and you kind of don't notice it, but eventually the wheel collapses and you think, oh, that was sudden. But you look at the wheel and you've lost 3/4 of the spokes. So all of these little spokes, it's like somebody comes to me for a consult. You've got to find out which of these spokes are their biggest problem. Like some people have great diets and yet they're very emotionally unbalanced. They've got some big traumas in their lives. Or you've got to look at dental work. They've got an enormous amount of mercury in their mouth. You know, this is something that's very underrated. As you know, you've got that sitting in your mouth. It's very difficult to get everything else to work. There are so many things, so many little components to health that you can look at, and everybody has them in differing amounts. Now, people always say to me, people who are on this sort of eat a balanced diet or everything in moderation, those are my two real when I hear that, I think that's lunatic. I mean, if you want complete mediocre health, well, everything in moderation. Then what they mean is you can't eat the best food for humans all the time, like steak and organ meats and whatever. You can't eat that because that's dangerous. What you need is the odd packet of biscuits and the odd can of Coke, but in moderation, you see, because it's so funny. It's funny, isn't it, where people will eat these extraordinary things and they'll be fine with it. But if you sit with a group of people who have just a steak in a restaurant, they go, you're going to have a heart attack.
I know.
It's so funny. There was a great time when my daughter, local school, and they said, come in and see their food. They're very proud of this great food, all based on the Eat Well plate. Anyway, so I thought, yeah, all right, I'll go in. And I went in, and they have these little tables with these little kiddie chairs, And I was sitting there with my daughter, and there was some, chicken breast with no fat on it, some probably horrible corn-fed crap. And they'd take the skin off as well, so there was no fat in there. There was a piece of broccoli that, looked like it'd been in the washing machine all night. And there was a sort of bread roll thing, and a low-fat yogurt. And I thought, well, some dry potatoes as well, of course. And I was looking at this, and my daughter said, "Can I eat the bread roll?" And I said, "Well, it's up to you. You know what it does." And she always gets gut ache if she eats any wheat. We don't have any in the house, but she'll go and find some at somebody's house every now and again. And I said, "Well, it's up to you. It's not very good for you." And you could see the other parents were staring at me, and like, what the hell is he saying? And it only then did it occur to me that these parents were probably in their late 20s, early 30s. Now, I'm 58 now, and it's my second family. I have a son of 31 and kids of 12 and 5 now. And this was a couple of years ago, and I thought, hold on, I am twice their age, and I'm the only parent who can actually fit their ass on one of these chairs. And I thought, they're following the dietary guidelines, and they are metabolically destroyed at their age. And their kids are going the same way, Yeah. My son, who's 5, he's just muscle. He's so solid. He's got no fat on him, but he weighs a ton. And you pick him up, and I just get used to picking him up. You pick one of his friends up, and they're sort of like little dough balls, and they weigh nothing. And you see the other parents, if they pick Peter up, it's like, oh God, what's he got? He's got such muscle and bone density, but he's never had a vegetable in his life. He's had the odd potato and chips and whatever, and he eats chocolate and he eats a bit of fruit now and again. But most days he'll only eat meat. Right. And he loves it. He's been weaned straight onto meat, and he should be incredibly unhealthy. He's growing up on that. He's honestly one of the healthiest kids I can see, and so bright, so intelligent. And at our age, we're supposed to be having kids with Down syndrome and stuff,
Yeah.
We fed them.
There you go. It just goes back to the whole thing. I mean, you look at, the average BMI from, say, back in the 60s, where women tended to be smaller than the men. Nowadays, you've only got to look at it. And what has changed? They've introduced these new nutritional guidelines. But in general, most women are in the obese category. And yeah, what is it? Just look around. They were eating back then meat, and they're cooking everything in lard. And, nowadays it's like you say, it's everybody's going for the low fat option. But then what's going on? There's cancer on the increase, heart disease on the increase, stroke on the increase, people having their gallbladders taken out, it's just complete mess, but they can't see. Why can't they see it? Why can't they see it? What do you think's going on?
That's the enormous plant-based propaganda, isn't it? It's that 5 a day thing that was designed, just on the off chance of it, written on the back of the fag packet. What should we call it? Oh, let's have 5 a day. And then they increase it to 10 a day. And the dentist friend of mine says, oh, well, I'm going to get inundated.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, there's no scientific data. Like you say, it was just plucked from the ether.
Yeah. I think it was more likely out of somebody's arse, don't you? That's where they pluck this kind of thing.
Brilliant.
It's all the plant-based agenda. That's what's going on. It's metabolically damaged. And then what do? They go to Slimming World, and then it's just repeat business, isn't it? This is again set up for repeat business. I'm sorry if there's anybody watching who's lost a load of weight on Slimming World, but if you actually look, what weight did you lose? It's just weight on the scales. Throw the scales away, get a tape measure. You want to know if there's bone density. A lot of people who have been starved, a lot of these people who are very obese are actually starving. They're very, very lacking in all sorts of nutrients, and the body is just incredibly confused, and it can't burn.
That's why they're always hungry, because their body is trying to say, please, can you give me this?
Desperately trying to get nutrients out of some kind of frozen pizza or something, you know. So they haven't got a chance. So, and often women find that when they go onto a keto or carnivore diet, that they sometimes put weight on. Whereas that's because a lot of women have been on vegan or vegetarian or low fat diets and low calorie diets. And this is metabolically very damaging for their hormones. And so then they start to put on bone density and their muscles start to come back. And so they will put on weight very often, not always, but initially. But
what type of weight?
Yeah, what type of weight? You know, you want to be putting that on. I mean, it reminds me of back in the days of the gladiators. Do you remember on the TV? And I was running a gym, and women used to come in and they say, "Oh, who was it? Jet was the one that everybody loved back then." And I remember one particular woman came in and said, "Oh, you know, I want to be like Jet. You know, I'd love to get the weight down to what Jet weighs." And I said, "Well, how much do you weigh?" And she said, "Oh, I weigh 10.5 stone now, and I used to weigh 8. You know, I'd love to." So, you know, a Jet's probably about 11 or 12 stone. It's just, no. So yeah, it's muscle. You know, just really seriously, it's not about it's not about the weight. It's about the composition of the body. If we could understand in diet and in medicine, if we could only understand that there is only one problem, and that is mitochondrial dysfunction. You know, if we could start to think of things at a cellular level and take care of our mitochondria, you know, you take care of the pennies, the pounds take care of themselves. And so if we look at the mitochondria, and maybe with an eye to healing the gut, but that's the same thing basically. You know, when the mitochondria come online, the gut will heal up. And if our cells are healthy, then they don't create cancer cells. They don't go crazy and create autoimmunity. They don't, you know, this isn't happening. And the body has its own healing systems in place. Modern medicine is very, very arrogant. And they think that some chemical is going to fix this or fix that. Well, they don't really. They know it doesn't. But they think it's either the best they can do, or they're evil bastards in pharma companies who are really trying to keep us all sick, you know, for making their trillions. And, you know, this is why the people who actually were helping people properly to fix their cancer or quite often used to end up face down in swimming pools or have suspicious accidents and whatever. They don't want that kind of thing known. And if people who are now doubting and going, oh God, no, I mean, really look into what happened in sort of 1913 and onwards with the Rockefeller Foundation, you know, and how he came in and completely took over modern medicine. And it is not medicine. It's a very dangerous repeat business model. And it was set up like that to create an enormous amount of money, and he succeeded in it beautifully. But it's not medicine.
Well, yeah, I mean, who wrote the textbooks for the doctors to go through medical school anyway? You know, who was running those universities, or where were they getting their information? So the ones that have gone in with good intentions have just been fed fundamentally poor information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, there's some beautiful docs around now who are waking up, many of them. And one of my favorite is Ken Berry. I mean, he's great. He wrote a book, The Lies My Doctor Told Me, and it became a real bestseller. So obviously they're very threatened by this. To me, very suspiciously, I asked him about it once, and he was kind of cagey about it. I guess he didn't want to say, but he had his house burned down and his business, his practice burned down within about 6 months. And you're like, I wonder what happened there. I don't know. I mean, I have no proof, but things are a bit suspicious there. They still don't like this going on, that somebody really starts to make inroads. But what's lovely, I mean, I got a lump in my throat in one of his podcasts where he said, and a lot of other doctors have said this similarly, particularly some that we speak to, you know, in this group called the Human Unleashed that I'll maybe mention at the end. But, you know, they say, and Ken said, I'm doing this to say I'm sorry to all the people that I harmed while I thought that my medical training was the way to go. I think that's beautiful, you know, and he's carnivore as well, carnivore docs. Many carnivore docs out there, if people want to look them up, you know, Paul Saladino, Ken Berry.
Yeah, there is so much out there, and I will have to sort of, you know, put my hand up to that. For a quarter of a century, I was giving out very poor advice. You know, healthy breakfast, a bowl of porridge maybe with a banana and a glass of orange juice. I mean, just, okay, I'm truly sorry. I'm really sorry.
Metabolic chaos. Isn't it?
Oh my goodness, what a start to the day. But it's almost, you know, it's not that I feel angry, but I do feel cheated. That for years I was going by the training that I was given, that I've been paid for. Can I have a refund, please? Because it was completely wrong. Whereas now, yes, I have gone back and retrained. I studied through Professor Tim Noakes, so the Nutrition Network. So he, South African doctor, scientist, he was basically, well, he had to fight the medical establishment for 4.5 years, and he won because he advised a nursing mother to wean their child off onto a low carb, high diet. And you can't say that, even though cholesterol is fat. Hello. You're not really weaning them off. You're just continuing. But it's lovely to see that, you know, some of these people, they are taking on the establishment. They are proving beyond reasonable doubt that their advice actually is the correct advice. And that I think what people need to do, rather than what I feel like with all this that's going on, it's like everybody's waiting for somebody to come and save them. So they're waiting around, continuing with their lifestyles, not taking any responsibility for their health, blaming others for giving them something, and waiting for the government to give them this injection that's going to solve everything. Whereas, you know, I know that we need to take responsibility for our own bodies. Start researching it. Why are we giving our power away to somebody that actually doesn't care about us? Understand, but I think this, for a lot of people, unless they are in pain, so if they don't know that they've got some, you know, type 2 diabetes is lurking 3 years down the road, because they can't see it, they're less inclined to do something about it until they've got some bad symptoms. But how would you encourage people to take responsibility for what they're eating? I mean, I know it's hard. I've gone up, I've gone down. I know what's good for me, and I can fall off the wagon and get back on the wagon. But what would you say to people that there's an alternative to this? There is a way that you can take care of your own health and you can boost your immune system so that there is nothing to fear.
Well, I think for me, it's about confidence. I have an online course called Autoimmunity, the Subtraction Method. I love this idea of subtracting things, you know, not adding things, not adding supplements, pills, powders, whatever, but taking away the things that are causing it in the first place. And the first section of that is on confidence. And I really drill it in. You should be joining groups, keto groups, carnivore groups, whatever, you know, and seeing the results that people are having, which far outnumber now the ridiculous studies that all the dietary advice was based on. It's seeing things in action rather than just, you know, just heard one lunatic talking about it or whatever. One of my favorite Tim Noakes stories was, you know, that time when he was, all that awful stuff was happening and they were sort of trying to persecute him and bring him down, and they failed. But, you know, incidentally, how brave Tim Noakes was, because he'd written huge books, The Law of Running or something, you know, and he'd written publicly, you know, and in the court case, he started to notice that one of the prosecution lawyers or whatever was getting slimmer and slimmer. And afterwards he came up to him and he said, "Thanks very much. I've been doing all your low carb stuff and it's really worked." Brilliant. That was very cool, you know. So I think really join the groups, find out people who are who can take you back to taking your own power back. I mean, the byline on my website is developing your intuition so you don't need us anymore. And this is what we're trying to do with the Human Unleashed. I'm so lucky to have met these guys through my carnivore group, and actually Graham Norbury I met privately. We've both been very fascinated with the work of Dr. Jack Kruse. And I got to know him, Jack Kruse, personally, and he did the foreword to my last book. And he is a most extraordinary dude. You know, his his science is unbelievable. But then even after going into all the science of how all this works, and I mean, it's deep, his website, you'll never get through it in a lifetime. He just says, well, the lion and the hippo don't need to know any of this stuff. You know, you just go with nature and that's it.
There you go.
And so Graham and I met through knowing about Jack Kruse, and Graham knows much more of the science than I do. He's utterly brilliant. And then Jeremy Ayres, Dr. Jeremy Ayres, who's been, helping people to heal for 30 odd years, extraordinary knowledge he has. And then Ben Hunt, who is great on all the sustainable agriculture and stuff like that, and also to do with all the technical stuff that we need. And he also, when we write books, we got a book coming out on the 25th called The Red Pill Revolution, about how the controllers have all been duping us for centuries. But that book's beautiful, and he's put it together from all our meetings and talks he had. Incredible writer. But to be part of this group, The Human Unleashed, it's so inspiring and so fulfilling now. And our basic ideas are that this is the best we know now. There's no dogma here. We just want to learn more and more and more. And the results people are getting from the stuff that we're putting out, there's hundreds of hours of info, and a hell of a lot of, I think probably about 40 hours of discussions back to March. They're free on the website about the COVID stuff. We do have a go on that. I'm really surprised my YouTube channel's still up with that stuff on there. But I mean, what we're trying to do, my long-winded thing is, the whole thing is to give it back to people, to stop this repeat business model, which is there in everything, in the diet clubs, in standard dietary advice, in the medical system. It's all repeat business. You've got to go back for more and more and more crap, and you get sicker and sicker and fatter, and it doesn't work. So it's giving the knowledge back to people. I mean, I love it when I see somebody that I've helped out, or we've helped out collectively in the Human Unleashed, and then you see them on the groups giving amazing advice to other people with tremendous confidence, and there's never a feeling for me, like your doctor would probably go, who's the hell is he to be saying somebody should be taking a statin or something? That's my job. If somebody's telling somebody, somebody's there and they're asking about gallstones, and they're saying, well, it's a low fat diet that causes the gallstones. The only reason the fat hurts, is because now the gallbladder can't deal with it. It didn't cause it in the first place. You need to get rid of the gallstones, not the gallbladder, and then eat a high fat diet. And it's something I was thinking of the other day when somebody came to me as a vegan, saying, oh, it's all got to be low fat. Saturated fat's going to kill you. And now they've healed, and now they're telling somebody else all about this gallbladder stuff that I didn't even know they knew about. And it's so rewarding.
Brilliant.
You've taken people to their own knowledge.
Well, you re-educate. It's got to be, when we understand why we are doing something and what's going on in the body, that they're more likely to, to stick with it. Because when you understand what the reasons behind it, so it is all about re-education, because what everybody's learned throughout their schooling to do with nutrition is fundamentally flawed. And brilliant, so that they can come to you and find out more about that. And I really would, people are going to have a lot of bias about, the carnivore diet. Please look into it. Try it for you. The proof is in the pudding. Try it yourself. Well,
you see, the thing is, everybody thought it was insane. I did. Everybody thought it was insane at some point, until you look at it. I mean, I always joke that all the time I was plant-based, I should really have stopped this ridiculous study into all this pseudoscience and just looked at a cave painting. And there's one bloke, and there's one spear, and there's one mammoth, and there's no broccoli side dish. This is
no
what
salad.
this is what we ate, and this is what we were healthy on. And the evidence is there, and it works. I mean, the further north you go, the tribes there ate meat pretty much exclusively. The handful of berries that they had in the autumn is not what kept them healthy.
No.
It was the fatty meat and the caribou and the seals and the fish. And that's what the Inuit ate. And yes, they were healthy.
Yeah, well, the Inuits, I mean, we wouldn't be, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to survive where they do. The Inuits pretty much raw reindeer and fat. That's pretty much their whole diet, right? They wouldn't have had any vegetation living.
Yeah, well, if you read sort of some of the old accounts of them before the grains appeared, obviously at the trading post, because the vegans always say, no, they're not healthy. They're not healthy. They've got this, they've got heart disease and whatever. But all those studies were done after the grains appeared, after the Western foods appeared. So they're not relevant. Everybody gets sick when that crap appears. But you see the polar explorers going there and getting scurvy within about 3 months. Now, with no vitamin C, they were curing scurvy with fresh meat. The ship's captains knew this. The polar explorers knew this. And they were finding the ones who went onto the local diet were not only curing scurvy, but getting rid of things that they had back home as well, all sorts of niggling health issues. If you read things like The Fat of the Land by Vilhjalmur Stefansson, it's a great book. And it's a crap book. It's written really badly, but the info, the info in there is really cool. I mean, it's written a long time ago and it's really repetitive and long-winded, but you skim through it and the sort of facts that you get about how the Inuit lived and how healthy they were. And this has been going on a long time. It's proven. There are whole races, the Sami, the Maasai, the Inuit. This is nothing new. What is new and what is a fad diet is veganism. No culture has had that. Nobody stays healthy on it for long. If anybody doubts that, go to YouTube, put in my health failure or why I'm no longer vegan. You'll find hundreds of them, some of them pretty well-known vegans previously who had vegan channels. And it's always the same thing. Something goes wrong metabolically or digestive issues or autoimmune issues. Something always goes wrong at some point. We're not designed to eat like that. It's a leap. I know it is, but most of us who are carnivores, I find them the most educated in diet. Very few of them go straight to carnivore. More and more are doing it now, which is great, straight from a standard diet to carnivore, because the information is out there. But most of us who were sort of early adopters of it, well, I say I'm an early adopter, okay, coming up to 6 years now, whatever. There are people who've been on it decades, who are very quiet about it for a long time, who figured it out long before I did. But if even 5 years ago the info wasn't there, but now there is. And what you should realize is that all of us have been through every diet. We grew up on a standard meat and 2 veg, people of my age anyway, and we were pretty healthy. That was okay back in those days, and not so many EMFs, no LED lights in the house, not TV on all night, phones at night, all that crap. So we were pretty healthy on meat and 2 veg and whatever. We didn't have seed oils, so we were fine. And then I went sort of macrobiotic, then vegetarian, then sort of pescatarian. Everything I've tried, everything vegan. I've been through all these diets and advised people on them, trying to get people healthy on them. And now the results I've had, and when now somebody comes on for a consultation, I just know they're going to have success. Whereas before it was like, yeah, they might have a bit. I might be able to help them a bit. Oh, they lost 5 pounds in the last 6 months. Isn't that good? It's like, no, not really. No, a lot better than that. But so the results that we're having now, and we have been through it all. It's not our first rodeo. It's not our first diet. We've been through all of these things. We're honestly not idiots or extreme. And the
proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely. And so I just encourage people to just look into it, because my attitude all of my life has been, that's interesting, I'll look into it. When people like vegans or qualified dietitians, of course, they come up on my channels or whatever and go, you know nothing, have you ever tried carnivore diet? No, I would never do it. No, I never. And they're so stuck in that. To me, if something comes up, it's like with me, it's dry fasting now. I think it's utterly fascinating. I've done so much water fasting and I lost a load of muscle. And now all the things about dry fasting, of after certain days, again, myths that you're going to die after 3 days with no water. No, you don't. Whether it's necessary or not, if you're eating a perfect diet, I don't think so. But it is very interesting what happens in it. So for me, it's not like, oh, that's crazy, you're going to die after 3 days. But no, maybe somebody in the desert or something, sweating and walking around. But at home, chilling out, no, people are doing 11 days. People are doing more than that. 11 days seems to be a point where there's some tremendous research out there that shows that, you get through 2 acidotic crises. It can uproot chronic disease in one hit. There's a certain time around 5 to 6, 7 days or whatever, where you start producing your own stem cells in abundance. There is
so much. There is so much. Yeah. I studied Dr. Ashumi's research on the... he won the Nobel Prize. You wonder why isn't it more spoken about? You don't win a Nobel Prize for nothing. He won a Nobel Prize of Physiology for his research in this. What does autophagy do? We should be talking more about this. viruses, well, it's going to be on them straight away. But that wouldn't be good for business. I mean, I think that's got to be another topic, Phil. I think that we'll have to do that as another topic. The unfortunate thing is there's no money in it, because if you're not buying food and you're not a consumer, but there is so much science behind fasting, dry fasting included. But I think we'll save that for another day. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just say, as the last thing to it, just if there's anything you think is crazy, look into it more. It's probably not.
Absolutely. Look into it and try it for yourself. So thank you, Phil. An absolute mindful. There's so much knowledge there. Absolutely fantastic. So if anybody wants to get in touch with him, I have all his details there. So next week, I think Monday, for a coffee with Karen, we are going to be discussing depression. That's another downside of what is going on at the moment. But again, it is a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So it's about just finding solutions rather than focusing on the depression. So thank you very much.
How much does gut health correlate to depression?
It's going to be all linked, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
beautiful,
all linked. Our whole mental health, it's all linked. So thank you for listening, and tune in next week. Thanks. Bye.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.